I've got my cup of tea. I'm ready. Are you? Let's go look at my April garden. April's been a busy month. We've done loads, and I can't wait to show you what we've done. This is by far the biggest change in the garden, isn't it, Archie? What do you think of our new terrace? Isn't it lovely? It's been a lot of work, but we finally turned a corner of the garden that was just a dumping ground. I don't know if you remember the picture from last video, but I will link it. I will link the video so you can see how much the garden has changed, especially this part of it. And I'm so excited to have this space to sit. We'd had many plans for this area. We were going to, first of all, turn it into a pergola. Then we thought it might become a wildflower meadow, something along those lines. But finally, we decided to settle on this design, which is just another little terrace. And it came out of the idea, well, recently my son was on the egg chair and he was very comfortable because he loves it there. But my daughter also wanted to get comfy and she didn't really have anywhere where she could sit. So I came up with the idea of creating this terrace. Now it currently just has this bench on it, but our plan is to build a pallet sofa, kind of corner pallet sofa along here. So eventually it'll be another place to chill out and enjoy just, being in the garden. And we're really lucky it's a south-facing garden, but it can get very hot. So actually having this space that's a little bit more shaded is actually really, really lovely. Now, as you can see, there isn't as much planting around here yet as I would like, but I'm really excited to show you the things that I have planted. This area here is another little project of mine that I have recently started working on. This is the path up to the terrace. If you remember from, there comes Archie, from last month's video, what we used to call the middle terrace up there used to have the compost bin in it. But as you can see, the borders are filling in a little bit. And this was just grass until quite recently, but the grass was never fantastic there. Obviously, we do walk past there quite a lot. So instead, we decided to turn it into a little border with some stepping stones in it. And again, if you were with me last month, you will not be surprised by any of the plants that I'm about to mention. The blue flowering, little purple flowers are scabious butterfly blue beauty. The little evergreen at the front with the white flower is Hebe Celine. Got some box balls behind it and a Desdemona rose. Very much repeating the theme from the garden in other parts. I like the idea of having quite a cohesive look to the garden, and as well as there's just a tiny, I don't even know if you can see it, tiny little Nepeta planted here that will echo the Nepetas that are planted up there. Currently, this one especially is just a little thing, but hopefully soon it'll look really beautiful, mirroring the planting that's up there on the middle terrace, but also dotted throughout the garden. This is my new lot of seed babies. My cosmos are coming along. I'm excited about using them to fill some of the gaps in the garden. It's a whole lot of different cosmos. Cosmos Purity, Cosmos Rose Bonbon, Snow Puff, Cranberry. I'm very excited to see how they are all going to come along. And last year, the cosmos in my garden were just incredible. So I can't wait to see how these are going to turn out. And it's definitely not too late. So you could definitely sow some cosmos now. You could sow them indoors, or, if you're past your first frost date, or if you know that there isn't any hard frost coming up, then you could actually just direct sow these as well. Here's some more of the plants that I showed you in the last video. The dahlias are really starting to grow. This is one called Night Silence. In the last video, I kept calling it Silent Night. Not quite sure why. In the last video, it was just a tiny dinky little thing. But as you can see, it's really starting to grow. And even though it is only the start of May, and officially our last frost date here in Edinburgh is actually the start of June, I am very tempted to put them in the ground sooner rather than later. I had also promised you that I would plant these cobaeas in some little teepees, but I've actually decided to forego that step. Again, we've had a surprisingly mild spring, and so I just decided to be brave and plant them out already. It could be a mistake. We could still get a sharp frost and then they could be in big trouble. But the weather forecast is looking pretty good and my garden's quite sheltered. So I'm hoping that these cobaeas will do okay. I've planted this one and I've planted 2 others out in the garden already. I will show them to you now. There's another cobea here starting to grow. Last summer I planted a cobea on this trellis, and before long it had covered the entire trellis and was growing into the tree, into the acer above it. So I'm excited to see it doing the same thing again. And the reason I'm doing this is because my little star jasmine, Tracheospernum desmonoides, is taking its time. Eventually it will cover this whole trellis, but it has not done so yet. So while it is growing up, I have used the cobea just to create a bit of interest already. And in here I have my 3rd cobea that is already in the garden, as well as a bleeding heart plant that is actually growing out of my wall. I did not plant that, it just makes a little appearance every springtime. Now I'm using the cobea here much in the same way that I'm using it over on the trellis. I have a climbing rose here. This is Madame Alfred Carrier, and hopefully soon it will cover all this area here, but it's going to take its time. So in the meantime, I'm using the cobea to give me lots of interest on this rather bare part of the garden. As you can see in the planters on either side of the terrace, I've planted just a few things, but the main thing I'm excited about is at the end of each planter is a climbing rose. There's one there, and there's the same one over there. The rose is called the Generous Gardener, and it will hopefully soon cover the trellis with some really, really lovely roses. And the reason I chose it is, first of all, it has some really lovely blooms, but also it can handle part shade. Now this bit is probably the most shaded part of my garden. It still does get a fair amount of sunlight, but I'm hoping that they will still flower nicely even though they're not bathed in sunlight all of the time. I've also planted along the edge of our new terrace some scabious butterfly blue beauty. If you were with me last time in the March video, I probably bored you to tears about that little plant, but I really love it. So there's one of those there, some pittosporum, and quite a few foxglove seedlings, as well as some snapdragon seedlings, and what will soon hopefully be a nice little box hedge. And then also in the planters are some more foxglove and snapdragon seedlings, as well as some astrantia. And down here, some more foxgloves and spirea. This part of the garden isn't beautifully planted yet, but hopefully soon, when I've got a bit more budget to plant it up, it'll be really lovely. But as you can see, it's definitely better than it was before. As you know, I always get a bit nervous before I do the big walkthrough, but I've done it a few times and I think the garden keeps getting better. So it's not quite as daunting as it was last time. So let's go. As we step out of the conservatory door, things are starting to look a little bit brighter, look a little bit more interesting, but my pots by the back door definitely needs some work. I've ordered some dahlias. It was the Butterfly collection from Sarah Raven, which has a dahlia, Mystic Dreamer, scabious, and verbena white blush, which I'm very excited to put into that pot, and that one there. So hopefully soon this whole area will look much nicer. The veg bed is taking a bit more shape. Some peas are starting to come up. I've planted some squash. The kale is doing its thing, and some lettuces are starting to come up, and my red currant is flowering. So hopefully this year we will have some red currants on it, as well as some plums on the plum tree. These are my tulips. I'm so pleased with how they've come up. Got a mixture of white and purple ones at the moment, and there are some pink ones that will come up at some point now, and also some daffodils called Talia that are also currently flowering. I'm quite excited because normally here in Edinburgh we're quite far behind the rest of the country in terms of our tulips flowering. I've had some of these tulips not flower until May for me. So the fact that they are actually flowering and have been flowering for really quite a long time is quite exciting for me anyway. And in fact, our spring has been so mild that I've actually got rosebuds already, which is very, very unusual. This is my little pot collection by the back door. Some more foxgloves that are hoping to find a home soon. One of my many desdemonas, and as you can see here, first of my rosebuds. As I say, normally we would not be having rosebuds here in Edinburgh at this time of year, but some are there already, so I'm quite excited. This is my climbing iceberg, which will go up the conservatory. Oh yes, we've also made some progress in painting it. Not quite done yet, but making some progress. Now, the new terrace, here it is. I'm so pleased with it. It's so much nicer than looking at that dumping ground. And as I said earlier, can't wait for all of the plants to start growing up. Here is another Desdemona. She's also got some buds on her. So, you know, it really is starting to happen. This is the little bed that I showed you. I think it was in the February video that I actually put this in. Before then, it was just lawn that led all the way up to the path. And look at that erysimum, that wallflower. It has not stopped flowering since I put it in February. And the scabious butterfly blue beauty is also working its socks off. It's just incredible. Oh, and the other thing I did is I planted another Amelanchier. I promised last time that I would bore you to tears about these lovely trees. I planted this as a bare root. So hopefully soon we will have a lovely big Amelanchier here. Then not much has changed in here, I don't think. Just things starting to grow, and I'm excited about planting some more things in here as well. You can see the Nepeta is starting to grow, and the GM over there as well. Things are starting to grow, like I just said. And my Wollerton Old Hall is also making its way up. Oh yes, when I was at my botanics course recently, I'm doing a horticultural diploma, they told us how good it is to really tie in your stems, because then horizontally on your climbing roses, because then you break what's called apical dominance and you have your roses growing from many different points, as you can see here. So they are bushier and they will flower more. There's also a Wollerton Old Hall down there, but as you can see, that's going to take a little while to catch up. Then onto the terrace. I planted a lot of these pots and I showed them to you last time. I've added a couple and I feel like they are really, really coming into their own now. You can see this little pot, more scabious butterfly blue beauty, some Mexican fleabane that will hopefully flower for us very soon, some ivy at the back, and some Cobea scandens. If you've watched one of my videos before, you will be sick of me talking about scabious butterfly blue beauty. But as you can see, I absolutely adore it, and it is literally all over the place. But it has been flowering its socks off for more than a month already, and it's just going to keep going. So I just think it really, really earns its place. Here, this bed, and this one down there, I've expanded a little bit. I've discovered this Pittosporum, which I just think has a lovely bit of movement to it. I'm always on the lookout for evergreens that have a bit of softness and a bit of movement, and I think it contrasts beautifully with my other obsession, Hebe Celine, and then the box ball there. And there in there you see another rhizomum. This one is bull's mauve, again flowering for a very long time and just simply lovely, as well as some of my tulips. Up there, very much continuing the theme, scabious, butterfly blue beauty, the Hebe Celine, and there'll be some nemesias in there as well that will start flowering very soon. And then of course the Desdemona up there. There is actually, in the last video I told you that bare root rose here was a Desdemona. It's actually not, it's a Scarborough Fair. But there is a Desdemona over in that bed over there. And again, repeating the theme throughout the garden. Got some Nepeta in that bed, some a Desdemona, scabious, and all of the usual suspects. And on that arbor over there, growing up it very soon, hopefully, we will also have a rose, which we have on the other terrace over there. Just little, but soon, hopefully it'll be beautiful. It is the Generous Gardener. So, and then there's another Generous Gardener just at the foot of the arbor. So hopefully, when you come back, maybe for the June, July, or August video, you will see more of it growing up the arbor that we have named Archie's Den. And then in here, we've got lots of repeating themes again. Nepetas, geums, foxgloves, rose Desdemona, and all the usual suspects. And you can see here, this little geum is going to flower very soon, which is quite exciting because, as I say, normally these things do take quite a long time. Here is the terrace, nothing much exciting happening here, except that we sadly missed the flowering of the Amelanchier. I was really keen to show you guys, but I'll blend in a picture of what it looked like when it was flowering. It was unbelievable. It was just stunning. I cannot recommend this tree enough. It's just gorgeous, absolutely lovely. But here's another one, another tree that I absolutely adore. This is Malus everesti. It's just gorgeous as well. Just absolutely in flower now. Really, really sweet. But if you were to say to me, which is the one tree that I should have in my garden, I would say go for an Amelanchier. You just cannot beat them. This is my little water trough with my most shaded planting. Ooh, this one here I want to talk to you about, wasabi. Didn't really know you could grow it in a garden in this country, but it has been incredibly happy. And of course, some ferns. I'm really actually enjoying the more shaded planting, bringing in all of those textures. So moving around, we've repaired that planter. Last time you may have seen it, the bottom was falling out, but it needs a lot of work. And in fact, this whole area needs a bit of work. So check back. Hopefully next month we will have made it much, much prettier. There's some neighbors doing some work. Excuse all the noise. The planting here is coming along a little bit, but again, it's just exciting to think that soon it will all just be much, much nicer, much more exciting. Nepeta is growing along. Oh look, there's a little bee on the scabious. If you ever ask me what is a plant that I should definitely grow in my garden, this has to be one of them. Definitely in my top 5, because it just flowers for so long, and as you can see, the bees really, really love it. She's having a great time on there, isn't she? Anyway, another little rose here. This is another Scarborough Fair with a Desdemona. Up there, you can see I am trying to repeat some themes in the garden, even though it is still looking quite messy. I would like to bring in a little bit more order, a little bit more repetition. But it is a journey, isn't it, with our gardens? We can never do it all as quickly as we want, and I just need to be patient. Our little log pile here that my son helped me make, and this is the pond. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that our bucket pond is gone, the one that we had all of the tadpoles in, and that is because we've actually moved them. into the main pond now. They are big, they're strong, they've changed so much since last month, and they're now able to escape from the newts that we have in this pond. So we made the decision to transfer them. My daughter and I spent an afternoon carefully scooping them all out and moving them in, and they do seem to be much happier. Well, not necessarily much happier, but very happy in the main pond. You can see them scuttling along every once in a while. They seem to have times when they're very busy and then times when they're very quiet. So it's not always easy to capture them, because sometimes it's hard to predict when they will be busy. You may be able to catch them, see them in there. My daughter and I were out here the other day watching the pond, and we discovered that we have at least 5 newts in here. We saw 2 together at the same time, then another one immediately afterwards at the other end of the pond, and one that was very, very skinny and one that was much chunkier. So we definitely have quite a few newts in this pond, but hopefully some of the tadpoles will survive. Over there is the messy part of the garden. I'm trying to let it grow a little bit just to give the wildlife a bit more of a chance, but also I can't afford to plant it all up straight away. So, oh, there's a little bird. So I'm letting some nettles and things like that grow in there. Apparently nettles are great for nesting for butterflies and their caterpillars. And it's a part of the garden, you know, the middle of that planting bed isn't where my daughter is going to play, and my son's not going to be running around there. So it feels like quite a safe place to do that. And eventually I'm hoping to plant it up, but I also thought it might be quite good to have a slightly wilder area just at the edge of the pond. Oh, another new addition is that little water lily. It's called Hermione. It's not a very big one, so hopefully it'll be big enough. It won't be too big for the pond, but it will shelter it and shade it a little bit, because it does get full sun here. And last year we had quite a lot of algal bloom. It was the first year of the pond, so I'm hoping that that will help keep it a bit more shaded. Back to the trellis, which I've already showed you, and this new bed here with more scabious butterfly blue beauty, my absolute obsession. And then around here, this solitary pink tulip. All the other pink tulips are making us wait for them. Our fan-trained apple tree and the egg chair, my kids' favourite place to sit. And my dog's log pile. I'm not sure why. He always collects them and puts them there. Now, in case you're wondering about the scabious, there are lots and lots of other fantastic scabious, but the reason I bang on about butterfly blue beauty is because it has just flowered incredibly, whereas this one over here is a different scabious, and it is absolutely lovely as well, but it's just not nearly as floriferous as this one, so it really is hard to beat. Anyway, thank you for joining me on the garden tour. Here is another view of the raised bed with the tulips that are flowering. Thank you for joining me on our garden tour, and I will see you for the May garden video. I wonder which of the roses will be blooming when I'm filming it.